From now on, Mom, your pension goes straight to my account. You need nothing more. Just a corner to die in. The words cut me. Colder than the bitter winter outside. My throat tightened. A knot of disbelief and raw pain. And I couldn't utter a single sound in response. But that night, when he opened the refrigerator door, the sudden blast of cold air must have been nothing compared to the shock. He froze, then started screaming. His scream tore through the profound silence of the house, sharp as a blade slicing through old, fragile cloth. It was a sound so raw and primal that every dog in the neighborhood erupted into a frantic, panicked chorus, as if sensing some unseen disaster unfolding. My next-door neighbor, Mrs. Martha, immediately snapped on her porch light. I heard Mr. Harris's gate creak open in the dark. The entire street, usually so placid, stirred with a sudden, unwelcome agitation. Yet, I remained on the back porch, slowly rocking my mother's old wool shawl, a relic knitted 40 years ago, wrapped tightly around me. Its familiar, scratchy fibers offering a phantom comfort against the cold. I gazed up at the vast, indifferent expanse of stars above me, counting 1, 2, 3. I lost my tally when his screams started again, louder this time, echoing not just in the house, but in my very bones. And then, for the first time in my 67 years of living, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touched my lips. Someone, finally, was screaming because of me. You might wonder, what kind of mother finds such a grim satisfaction in her own son's torment? What kind of woman just sits there, rocking calmly, while pure chaos erupts inside her own home? Let me tell you, the kind who had been systematically crushed for 3 long, agonizing months. The kind who had been meticulously stripped down to a mere shadow, a ghost, an inconvenient afterthought in her very own house. A woman whose money was brazenly stolen, whose dignity was ruthlessly trampled, and whose very voice was effectively silenced, not by a stranger, but by her own flesh and blood. The story I'm about to share with you, with my heart still aching and my hands still faintly trembling from a suppressed, burning rage, didn't begin that night of shocking screams. No, it began 3 months earlier, on a gloomy July day, the very moment I lowered my husband into the ground, and, unknowingly, I buried my fragile, newfound freedom alongside him. It was a bleak Thursday morning in July. The sky hung low, a heavy, universal gray that seemed to carry the collective grief of every widow on earth. We lowered Michael's coffin into the damp earth. I wore a cheap, simple black dress, hastily bought from a downtown store just days before. In 42 years of marriage, I had never once needed mourning clothes. Michael, my husband, had always been too stubborn to die, until his heart simply decided it couldn't take it anymore. A heart attack, the doctor had said. Quick, painless, without a final goodbye. He'd been fixing the backyard fence that Monday morning. When I called him in for lunch, I found him lying on the grass, a pair of pliers still clutched in his hand. During the funeral, people came to hug me, murmuring all the familiar, hollow phrases. He's in a better place now. God has his reasons. Stay strong. Rachel, I felt torn in two. A living testament to conflicting emotions. Part of me grieved deeply, profoundly, for the breakfasts we'd never share again, for the silly arguments over TV shows, for the faint scent of him still clinging to his pillow. 42 years cannot be erased in a single, sudden moment. We had taken root in each other, even if sometimes those tangled roots brought pain. But the other half of me, the part I still feel a quiet guilt admitting, felt a strange, quiet relief. Michael was a good man, hard-working, never harsh or violent in his manner. Yet, he was deeply controlling. Every aspect of our shared life, every cent in the house, every decision involving money, seemed to be under his meticulous supervision, as if my own work, my own lifelong efforts, simply didn't count. For decades, I had been a public school teacher, retiring with a perpetually worn-out back and a voice hoarse from years of classroom instruction. Still, my hard-earned pension went directly into his account, and he would condescendingly hand me a mere $800 a month for all household expenses. And for myself, Babay Mayuan, it felt like pocket money handed to a child, not a retirement fund for a woman. Whenever I expressed a desire for a new pair of shoes, a simple dress, or even a lipstick from the drugstore, his brow would furrow into a disapproving frown. Do you really need it? Rachel, we should save. Save for what I never knew. The house was paid off, free of any debt, but he clung to money with the desperate grip of someone guarding water in a vast desert. Perpetually terrified it would one day run dry. And when he died, I felt the hollow space he left behind. A chasm in my daily routine. The lawyer handling the estate, Mrs. Esther, a refined woman whose silver glasses gleamed and whose presence carried the faint, expensive scent of a quality perfume, called me to her office 2 weeks after the funeral. She opened a neat brown folder, her voice professional, almost clinically detached. I didn't grasp every legal detail, but some numbers, stark and precise, snapped me fully awake. Our modest house in the Dallas suburbs was valued at $680,000, entirely debt-free, mortgage-free. And then, the most important detail Michael had, unexpectedly, put everything in my name in his will. A fact I had lived 42 years without knowing. Your husband wanted to make sure you'd be protected, Mrs. Esther said, adjusting her glasses, her gaze direct. He had even added a specific note saying that if our son, David, ever tried to claim my assets, the entire estate would go directly to charity instead. I froze, the air leaving my lungs. Michael had never spoken a word of this. But now, replaying years of memories, I remembered how consistently he had avoided giving money to David. He had simply never trusted him. There's more, Mrs. Esther continued, her voice unwavering. His savings, life insurance, and retirement funds total $127,000. All yours. I was utterly speechless. Sharwan Siten Mayuan. A house worth nearly $700,000. And a monthly pension of more than $3,000. For the first time in my life, I was the sole, undisputed owner of my own existence. I left that office on trembling legs, my heart pounding not from sheer joy, but from the unfamiliar, almost terrifying rush of freedom. It was a strange, thrilling, and slightly terrifying feeling to be able to decide for myself, to buy what I wanted, to go where I pleased, to simply live how I chose, without anyone else's approval. But I soon learned that freedom is an incredibly fragile thing, especially when someone is patiently waiting in the shadows, ready to steal it from you. That very afternoon, I stood in the living room, looking at the old, worn furniture, the faded curtains, the bulky, outdated TV. I thought about redecorating, about traveling, about that deep blue velvet sofa I'd seen in the furniture store, the one that cost $2,800 and had quietly haunted my dreams for years. I smiled at the thought, a rare, genuine smile. But it faded quickly. Just 2 days later, the doorbell rang. And when I opened the door, there he was, David, my only son, standing on my porch with 2 large suitcases, a backpack slung over his shoulder, and that crooked, insincere smile he always wore when he wanted something from me. "Hi, Mom," he said, walking in without waiting for an invitation, already making himself at home. "I'm staying for a few days. We need to talk." And just like that, with 2 suitcases and 1 fake smile, hell itself walked into my quiet home. You want to know why he came back? Why now? Of all times. And what happened when he inevitably found out I had money? True money. For the first time in my life, stay with me. Because the true worst was yet to come. David never just showed up without a very specific reason. In the past 10 years, he'd visited me maybe 6 times. Always in a hurry. Always with some flimsy excuse or another. He lived in Houston, just a few hours' drive away. But the emotional distance between us was far greater. An ocean of silence and broken promises. At his father's funeral, he showed up late. The service had already begun when he walked in, wearing a wrinkled shirt and jeans, looking as if he'd just rolled out of bed. He didn't cry. He stood at the back, arms crossed, occasionally glancing at his phone. When the service was over, he gave me a half-hearted hug and said, "If you need anything, call me. I'll stay for a few days to help." But he didn't. The very next morning, he was gone, claiming an important interview. He didn't help me with any paperwork or stay with me through those suffocatingly lonely nights after Michael. And yet, 2 weeks later, he was back, luggage in hand. "Jessica kicked me out," he announced, tossing his bags onto the couch like he still owned the place. "We had a big fight. She told me to leave." Jessica was the 3rd woman I'd heard about, though I'd never met any of them. I only knew their names from the blurry photos he occasionally sent and the elaborate stories he spun when he needed to borrow money. "What about work?" I asked, still standing by the front door, a silent question in my stance. He shrugged, walked to the fridge, and drank orange juice straight from the bottle. "Didn't work out. The boss promised $3,200, but the contract only said $1,800. I'm not an idiot. I kid." My stomach sank with a familiar dread. I'd heard this story, or variations of it, far too many times. David always had a compelling reason for being unemployed. The boss was unfair. The pay too low. The hours too long. The company unstable. I longed to ask, "So, what exactly have you been doing for the past 5 months? Why didn't you call me?" But I didn't. I already knew the painful answer. He only remembered me when he needed something. "Do as you like," I said, forcing a brittle smile, the words tasting like ash. "Your room's still the same. The small back room, with its single bed, a creaky dresser, and the old band posters still stuck to the walls from his teenage years. I'd never taken them down. Perhaps, deep down, a foolish part of me still hoped he'd one day come home as the boy he once was. But the man who walked in that day wasn't that boy anymore. He was 38 now, his belly softening, his hair thinning, dark circles perpetually under his eyes. He dropped his bags on the floor, fell onto the bed without even bothering to take off his shoes. "I just need some time to get back on track, Mom." A few days turned into a week turned into 2, and me. As always, I let it happen. At first, a part of me was glad to have someone around. The house had felt too vast, too empty since Michael died. I often woke in the middle of the night, reaching for him, only to remember he was gone. That emptiness, that profound silence, swallowed me whole. Having David there, the faint sound of the TV late at night, the smell of reheated food in the kitchen, made me feel a little less alone. Though, most of the time, he just stayed in his room or sprawled across the living room couch, watching videos on his phone at a volume that made my head throb. I cooked for him, did his laundry, cleaned up his messes. Every time he ate without a thank you, left dirty dishes in the sink, or complained the food was bland, I swallowed my anger, a bitter pill, and told myself, he's going through a hard time. Be patient. Then came the inevitable requests. Mom, can I borrow $850? Need some work clothes for interviews. I gave it. Mom, my phone broke. Need a new one to job hunt around $1,200? I gave it. Mom, my scooter broke down. Repairs cost $620. I gave it again. Each time, he'd offer the same empty promise. I'll pay you back. Mom, once I get a job, but the job never came. And the money never returned. Mrs. Esther had already transferred the full $127,000 into my savings account. I printed the statement, a tangible symbol of my newfound security, and kept it in a blue folder along with my mother's jewelry and other important documents. Every night before bed, I'd open that blue folder and look at the numbers. 12,000 It represented a kind of safety I'd never known. A chance to live the rest of my life with dignity. Proof that I still mattered. But each time David asked for money, that number shrank. 12,250 Then $124,950. Then less. He didn't even blink when asking for more. One evening, as I was washing dishes after dinner, David walked into the kitchen, sat down, and started scrolling through his phone. He stayed silent for a while. A calculated pause, then said without looking up, his voice deceptively casual, Mom, we need to talk about your finances. My hands froze under the running faucet. A sudden chill spreading through me. My finances, I repeated slowly. The words caught in my throat. Yeah. How much do you still have in your savings? Around $100,000. My heart stopped. How did he know David? That's none of your business. He laughed softly. A cold, humorless sound. None of my business, I'm your son. The only one you have. If you die tomorrow, where does that money go? The church, some stranger, I turned, wiping my hands on a towel, my gaze hardening. I'm not dying, David. But you will eventually. Mom, you're 67. Living alone. Anything could happen. His tone carried no genuine concern. No filial care. Only cold, hard calculation. As if he was already measuring how much time I had left to him. A profound chill ran down my spine. A shiver of fear. I'm fine. David, I don't need anyone to manage my life. He shrugged, still not looking up from his phone. Whatever. Mom, just saying you should get things in order. It's for your own good. Then he simply left the kitchen. While I stood there, my hands trembling, my chest tight with a dawning, terribly realization. That was the first time I truly understood I was afraid of my own son. That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I thought of Michael, of the oddly protective clause in his will. Had he seen in David what I, in my naive maternal love, refused to believe? I clutched the pillow that still smelled faintly of his cologne and cried quietly. Afraid David might hear. I knew then that my precious freedom had an expiration date. And time was rapidly running out. What exactly was David planning? How far would he go? Why? Every time I looked at him, did I see a stranger wearing my son's face? The descent into that darkness was only beginning. Those first few weeks with David felt like living with a noisy, perpetually hungry ghost. He took up immense space, physically and emotionally. without ever truly being present. He woke late, usually after 11:00 a.m., shuffling into the kitchen in shorts, shirtless, his eyes still swollen with sleep. He'd open the fridge and stare into it. A silent, demanding presence, as if expecting the food to magically jump out and serve itself. He took whatever he wanted, the special yogurt I bought for the week, the slice of cheese I'd been saving for a snack, the last piece of cake, and ate it right there. No plate, no napkin, never asking, never thanking. I would stand by the sink, pretending to wash a cup that was already sparkling clean, just so I wouldn't have to look at him, because every time I did, a slow, burning anger, hot and unfamiliar, rose in my throat, an anger I couldn't yet name, because a mother, surely, isn't supposed to be angry at her own son. A mother is supposed to love, to be endlessly patient, to forgive, to sacrifice. But patience, I was discovering, has its absolute limits, and mine was rapidly running out. David spent his days scrolling mindlessly through the internet, watching endless videos, or playing loud games on the old computer he'd brought with him. Whenever I gathered my courage to ask about finding a job, he'd offer the same weary excuse. I've sent out a few applications. I'm just waiting to hear back. But no one ever called. Or if they did, he was never satisfied. They offered me warehouse work. $16 an hour. Are they kidding? I finished high school. I have sales experience. I've worked with important people. I'm not lowering myself like that. I bit my lip until I tasted blood. Lowering himself. I wanted to ask. You're unemployed. Living off your mother. Eating food bought with her pension. What? Exactly. Is lower than that, but I stayed silent. My words caught behind a wall of resignation. I just turned back to the stove, stirring the pot of beans, because I still clung to a desperate, foolish hope. Hope that it was just a phase, that one morning he'd wake up, truly wake up, and finally change. But hope, I've learned, is a dangerous thing. It makes you endure the utterly unbearable for far too long. That Friday night, the subtle insults began. I cooked rice, tender beans, sautéed beef with onions, and a fresh tomato salad. A simple meal, but made with genuine love and care. I set the table carefully, called him, and sat down. He ambled over, eyes still glued to his phone. Sat, stabbed a piece of meat with his fork, chewed slowly, then frowned in disgust. Mom, the meat's tough. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. Tough, yeah. You overcooked it. I looked at the piece of meat on my own plate. It was tender, flavorful, perfectly fine. It tastes good to me. David, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He shrugged, and with a casual disdain that felt like a slap, tossed the half-chewed piece back onto his plate. Maybe to you. But I'm not eating it. He got up, phone in hand, and walked into the living room. The TV blared seconds later. He was probably ordering pizza or a burger on an app again. Just for himself. I sat there, alone, staring at the meal I'd cooked with all my heart. My eyes stung. Not because he criticized the food itself, but because of the sheer ingratitude, the cold, casual cruelty that had so quickly become his norm. I ate alone in silence, each bite heavy as stone. The days that followed were filled with an endless stream of petty complaints. Mom, the Wi-Fi sucks. Upgrade it. Mom, the house feels like an oven. Turn on the air conditioning. Mom, buy better coffee. This brand is too weak. Whenever I tried to gently explain that I could only afford that specific Wi-Fi plan, that running the AC all day would hike up the power bill beyond our means, that I'd been drinking this very brand of coffee contentedly for years, he'd sigh impatiently. It was the sigh of an adult dealing with a particularly stubborn, slow-witted child who just didn't understand. Little by little, David took over the house, not with any intention of taking care of it, but to rule it, to assert his dominion over every aspect. He'd change the TV channel while I was watching a movie, spread his work things across the kitchen table, so I had to eat my meals uncomfortably on the couch, leave dirty clothes scattered all over the bathroom floor, use my towels without a thought, drink juice straight from the jug. Whenever I gently, timidly, said something, afraid he'd accuse me of nagging, he'd reply with infuriating casualness, "Come on, Mom. This is my house, too." But it wasn't. It was mine. And he knew that fundamental truth. One morning, as I was sweeping the porch, my neighbor Martha leaned over the fence, her tone laced with knowing curiosity. "Rachel, is David living with you now?" I forced a weak smile. "Just temporarily. He's getting his life together." She shook her head slowly, her eyes glinting knowingly, a silent pity in her gaze. "Men near 40 don't get their life together, dear. They get comfortable, and then they stay." My face burned with shame, not because of her blunt words, but because she was right. Everyone in the neighborhood would think the same thing, that I was the foolish old woman, letting her lazy, grown son come back and drain the remaining life right out of me. "He's my son, Martha. I can't throw him out." She gave a thin, knowing smile. "Mothers never throw their sons out, but sons can throw their mothers away. Remember that." She went back inside, leaving me there, holding my broom and a heart heavy with painful truth. That night, after washing the pile of dishes David had, as usual, ignored, I went to my room and opened the blue folder. The balance, $119,430. In less than a month, nearly $8,000 had vanished. Interview clothes, gas money, computer repairs, back pain medicine. There was always a reason, always an urgent, fabricated emergency. And me, I always gave in, because I was afraid he'd leave and never come back, afraid of being truly, utterly alone, afraid of dying in this house, unnoticed, and only being found when the neighbors smelled decay. I was effectively buying my son's presence with my own money, and he took it without an ounce of guilt. I closed the folder, hugged my pillow tight, and cried myself to sleep. But worse, much worse, was still coming. A week later, on a Saturday afternoon, David opened my bedroom door without the courtesy of a knock. His face was uncharacteristically serious. He dragged the small chair from my vanity, sat across from me with his legs spread wide and his hands placed firmly on his knees. "Mom, we need to talk seriously." My stomach went cold, a heavy dread settling deep within me. "About what?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He took a deep, theatrical breath, his tone heavy with manufactured concern. "About your money? About this house? About the future? You can't keep living like this, Mom, with no plan, no structure. Now that I'm here, I'll take care of everything." And right then, in that quiet room, the abyss truly opened beneath my feet. I realized with a jolt that I was living with a stranger, and a dangerous one at that. In life, there are moments when you realize you've irrevocably lost control, not with a loud crash, not with a clear, undeniable declaration, but quietly, insidiously, like sand slipping, grain by grain, through your open fingers. The more you try to hold on, the faster it seems to fall away. I was living that very moment, and didn't even fully comprehend its gravity yet. David sat there, in front of me, on the old, creaky chair, his expression stern, almost paternal, as if he were about to deliver some profound, necessary wisdom. "You're 67, Mom," he began slowly, his voice laced with patronizing concern. "Your memory isn't what it used to be. That's perfectly normal at your age." A sharp pain struck my chest. A cold, piercing recognition. "My memory is fine, David," I countered, my voice thin. He gave me a pitying smile, the kind doctors often reserve for stubborn, delusional patients. "I know you think so. But haven't you noticed you've been forgetting things lately? You left the gas stove on the other day. Didn't you, last week? You left your keys in the front door. Older people are easy targets. Mom, anyone could take advantage of you." I was about to respond, to protest vehemently, but he continued, relentless, not giving me a chance to speak. "Now that I'm here, I can help. I'm your son. Let me help you. We'll reorganize your finances. Put everything under one solid plan. You'll feel safer. And honestly, so will I, knowing you're protected." His words, on the surface, sounded reasonable, even gentle, coated in a veneer of concern. But something was fundamentally wrong, something vague, an insidious twisting, deep in my gut. "What do you mean reorganize?" I asked, my voice small, barely a whisper. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his gaze fixed on me. "First, we should combine everything into one account. Your savings, your pension, everything. I'll take care of it all. Mom, pay the bills, buy groceries, manage everything. You won't have to worry about a single thing, ever again." My heart started to pound erratically, a frantic drum against my ribs, but I can still manage. "David, I've been doing it alone just fine." "I know," he said, dismissing my autonomy with a wave of his hand. "But it's tiring for you. You should relax and enjoy your golden years. Let me handle it. Relax and enjoy your golden years." As if I were some senile old woman who couldn't even tie her own shoes, let alone manage a bank account. He didn't wait for an answer. The very next morning, I was woken by an insistent knocking on my bedroom door. "Mom, get up. We have to go to the bank." I made an appointment. I was still in my pajamas, blinking at the clock on my nightstand. "What time?" "David, now. The branch manager's only free this morning. Get dressed." I could have said no, could have locked the door and gone back to bed, asserting my will. But I didn't, because mothers always listen to their sons. Don't they? They don't question. They trust. How foolish. How utterly naive I was. At the bank, David led me down the hallway like a lost child in a vast, unfamiliar mall. He gripped my arm, practically pushing me forward with an insistent pressure. The manager, a man around 30 inches, a crisp navy blue suit and striped tie, greeted us politely. "Good morning, Mrs. Rachel. Your son explained everything. You'd like to give him power of attorney over your account." "Correct." My mouth opened, then closed again. The words stuck. I looked at David, who placed a firm, reassuring hand on my shoulder. "It's just for convenience. Mom, I'll handle everything, so you don't have to go to the bank anymore." The manager, sensing my hesitation, added, "With this authorization, he can transfer funds, pay bills, withdraw money, everything on your behalf. It's very common in families. especially when parents get older. Older. The word hit me like a physical blow. A brick to the chest. I wasn't disabled or senile. I was 67. Not 90. I still drove. Cooked. Cleaned. Maintained my own life. But in that sterile room, everyone looked at me as if I were utterly helpless. I need to think about it. I stammered, my voice weak. David squeezed my shoulder so hard it hurt. Mom, we're already here. Just sign it. The manager, impassive, slid the pen across the desk. And I, foolishly, blindly, signed. When we left the bank, David was beaming. A wide, triumphant smile. Like he'd just won a grand prize. He stopped by a bakery nearby, bought coffee and a cheese roll, and handed them to me as if we were celebrating a shared victory. It's all set now. Mom, everything's organized. You can relax. But I couldn't relax. My throat felt tight. My hands were cold. Even in the August heat, I wanted to cry, though I didn't know why. The tears unbidden. When we got home, David went straight to his computer, already absorbed in his new power. I stood in the kitchen, staring out the window at Martha hanging laundry, just as I'd done that very morning. 2 days later, he walked into the kitchen while I was peeling potatoes, leaning casually against the fridge with his arms crossed. He dropped the final bomb. Mom, I talked to the bank again. Starting next month, your pension will be deposited directly into my account. It'll be easier that way. The knife slipped from my hand, clattering loudly onto the floor, the sound echoing the shattering of my remaining control. What I whispered, it's better. Mom, I'll pay the bills. Buy what we need. Take care of everything. You don't need anything except a place to rest. Rest, that word again. But this time it sounded chillingly different. Like an eraser. Like an ending. David, that money is mine. He sighed in irritation. A clear sign of my inconvenience. I know. Mom. But I'll manage it now. It's for your own good. For my own good. I swallowed hard. A dry, bitter lump in my throat. I wanted to scream. To rip up those damning papers. To run back to the bank and undo everything. But I did nothing. I just stood there, gripping the cold edge of the sink. As the world around me, my world, completely collapsed. Because I had just given away my last shred of freedom to my own son. From that day on, everything changed. David took absolute control of everything. He did the grocery shopping, always choosing the cheapest items, the smallest quantities. When I dared to ask him to buy something specific, he would roll his eyes with barely concealed contempt. You don't need that. Mom, we have to save. Save with my money. The irony was a burning brand. He changed the Wi-Fi password and flatly refused to tell me. Accusing me of wasting data watching videos. He started monitoring the electricity, complaining whenever I left the kitchen light on for too long. Electric bills are expensive. Mom, be careful. I felt like a stranger, an unwelcome guest, in my own home. At the end of the month, he called me into the living room. A summons, not an invitation. He handed me 4 crisp $100 bills. Here, Mom, your allowance. I looked at the cash in his hand, like it was counterfeit, like a cruel joke. Allowance, yeah, $400 for your personal needs. If you need more, let me know. 400,000 yuan. While my pension was over $3,000 and my savings well over $100,000. David, I need more than that. For what, Mom? You don't go out. I cover everything. That's plenty. I took the money with trembling hands, went to my room, locked the door, and cried. I cried out of anger, out of crushing humiliation, and out of a growing, suffocating fear. I had become a prisoner in my own life, lying there, staring at the ceiling. I thought about Michael, my late husband, who used to control our finances, hand me money like a child's allowance, decide what was worth buying. For 42 years, I had dreamed of freedom, a quiet, simpler independence, and when I finally had it, I, inexplicably, handed it over to another man. The only difference was that Michael, strict as he was, truly loved me. We had built a life together, however imperfect. But David, he was just using me, exploiting my maternal instincts. And I was letting him. How could I be so foolish, and would he ever stop, or was this, truly, only the beginning, the abyss? I realized, had no bottom yet. There is a profound difference between merely living and simply existing. I learned that distinction the cruelest possible way. Living is when you wake up with purpose, when you can freely choose what to eat, what to wear, where to go, when you possess and use your own voice. Existing is when you are reduced to just another object in the house, taking up space, but utterly meaningless, a forgotten piece of furniture. That was me then, a woman merely existing in her own home, my essence slowly fading. The first weeks after David took complete control of the money were a relentless series of small, grinding humiliations that imperceptibly constructed an invisible prison, slowly tightening its grip around me. He controlled everything, from the groceries that came into the house to the minutiae of my daily life. He always bought the cheapest rice, sticky and mushy, and the cheapest beans, often full of pebbles I had to laboriously pick through, my back aching. The cheapest cuts of meat, tough and gristly, just saving. Mom, you don't eat much anyway. I still had all my teeth, still strong. But he spoke as if I were already too old to chew. One day, I asked him to buy a jar of olives. I had always loved olives, but Michael hated them. So for 42 years, I never bought any. Now that he was gone, I thought I finally could indulge in such a simple pleasure. Olives, David scoffed, his lip curling in contempt. That's extravagant. Mom, we can't afford fancy stuff like that. Can't afford it, I shot back, my voice sharper than it had been in months. A surprising defiance in my tone. David, I have over $100,000 in my account. He looked at me with that same irritated expression adults reserve for slow-witted children. You used to. Mom, now I'm using it wisely for our future. Our future. As if his future, his lavish lifestyle, were being meticulously built solely on my dwindling money. I never bought the olives. And after that bitter exchange, I stopped asking for anything at all. My friends slowly stopped visiting. Vanda, my closest friend for over 30 years, still called every week, inviting me out for lunch, for coffee, or just for a comforting chat. But every single time I agreed to meet, David would materialize with a ready-made excuse. Mom, it's too hot out right now. Your blood pressure could spike. Rest. Maybe next time. Until one day, he brazenly answered the phone himself and, in that soft, overly caring voice he adopted for outsiders, said, "Hi, Vanda. My mom's not feeling well lately. She's been very tired. When she's better, I'll let you know." Then he simply hung up. I was sitting less than 10 feet away. I wasn't tired. I wasn't sick. I was perfectly fine. Just suffocating. But he had decided I was ill. And Vanda, unsuspecting, believed him. Because sons don't lie about their mother's health, Right after that, she stopped calling, and I sank even deeper into a profound, chilling loneliness. Whenever someone knocked, the neighbor Martha, the mail carrier, anyone, David was always the one to answer. He'd open the door just a crack, effectively blocking the entrance with his body, and say quickly, dismissively, "My mom's resting. She can't have visitors right now," as if I were disabled, too frail to even say hello. I watched from my bedroom window, saw it all, felt the slow, agonizing burn of anger rise within me. But I couldn't do anything. I couldn't yell, couldn't push the door open and shout, "I'm here, I'm alive," because a part of me, my spirit, had already broken, and I didn't know how to begin to fix it. His pervasive control didn't stop with the money or the phone calls. He began deciding what I could wear. One morning, I put on a light floral dress I'd bought long ago but never worn. It was bright and lovely, and for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of my old self, like a woman again. I looked in the mirror and allowed myself a small, hopeful smile. When I walked downstairs, David looked me up and down, his gaze dismissive, and smirked. "Where are you going?" "Mom, nowhere. I just wanted to wear it." He shook his head, scrolling through his phone, not even making eye contact. "Floral dresses at your age look ridiculous. You should dress more modestly, more appropriately." My face burned with shame, a searing flush. I went back upstairs, changed into an old, faded blouse, and looked into the mirror again. But I didn't recognize the woman staring back. Pale, faded, invisible. Exactly what David wanted me to become. But the worst revelation, the most profound betrayal, came when I discovered what he had truly done with my money. One afternoon, David went out to run errands, leaving his computer carelessly open on the kitchen table. I was mopping the floor when the screen suddenly lit up with a notification. Normally, I never snooped. My nature was not to pry. But something, an insistent tremor of intuition, pulled me closer. On the screen was a WhatsApp web chat, confirming an order with a building supply seller. The details were stark luxury hardwood flooring, premium wall paint, imported faucets, total $12,400. Delivery address 428 Rose Street, apartment 301. My heart froze. A sudden, sharp cold spreading through my chest. I knew that address. It was a brand new building in one of the city's most expensive, up-and-coming neighborhoods. David had once vaguely mentioned he was investing in an apartment there, a casual comment I dismissed. Now, I understood investing with my money. I opened his browser history. The more I saw, the tighter my chest grew. A suffocating pressure, custom furniture invoices, a $900 refrigerator receipt, an $18,000 transfer to an electronics store, and another $23,600 to a construction company. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the mouse. Over $50,000. $50,000 gone from my savings, systematically siphoned away to decorate an apartment he had never dared to mention to me. I collapsed onto the sofa, my legs weak, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm, my head spinning with the weight of this deception. I wanted to vomit. He wasn't managing my finances. He was robbing me. And the worst part, the most agonizing truth, was that I had let him. I had signed the papers. I had, with my own hand, handed the keys to the thief myself. When David came home hours later, I was still sitting there, frozen, staring at nothing. He tossed his keys carelessly on the table, walked to the fridge. "Mom, is there anything to eat?" I couldn't answer. My throat locked up. My voice a silent scream. He grabbed a container of leftovers, microwaved it, ate while scrolling his phone, left the dirty plate on the counter, and went to his room. I stayed there, staring at nothing. A hollow void. That night, lying in bed, I thought about giving up, letting him take it all, letting him do whatever he wanted. Maybe it would be easier. Simply close my eyes, accept it, and wait until my body couldn't take it anymore. What could I even do? Fight him, a 8-year-old man. Strong, clever, sharper than me. A woman in her late 60s. What would I tell the police? That I'd signed over power of attorney and now, foolishly, regretted it. They'd laugh me out of the station. I truly thought I had no way out. But sometimes, when you hit rock bottom, you have only two stark choices: sink completely and vanish, or push yourself back up with every last ounce of will. My moment was coming. Change was closer than I realized. Have you ever felt yourself slowly disappearing, not all at once, in a sudden, dramatic implosion, but little by little, day by agonizing day? First, your voice fades, then your joy, then even the simple will to get out of bed in the morning, until one day, you look in the mirror and simply don't recognize the haunted stranger staring back at you. I was disappearing, and no one, it seemed, noticed. Or worse, no one cared enough to intervene. It had been nearly 2 full months since David had asserted complete control over my life. 2 months of living on a meager $400 allowance, eating cheap, unsatisfying food, wearing old, faded clothes, trapped inside my own house like a common criminal. I'd lost over £15. My clothes hung loose. My hip bones jutted out sharply. My eyes were sunken, and the dark circles beneath them never faded. A permanent bruise. Every night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the patterns of the plaster mocking my helplessness. I wondered how I had let it come to this. Wondered precisely how much money he had already spent, and whether I'd ever be brave enough to fight back against my own child. But whenever I imagined confronting him, my body would freeze, a paralyzing fear gripping me, as if my very spine had been pulled out and only a fragile, hollow shell remained. Until that Wednesday morning at the supermarket. David was out, taking care of business, which I knew, with a sinking certainty, meant spending more of my money on his secret apartment. Before leaving, he handed me a terse note and a single $20 bill. "Mom, buy laundry detergent and sponges. If there's anything left, get some bread. Tuve for detergent, sponges, and bread." I took it silently, waited for the front door to close, then put on my worn-out coat, grabbed my faded tote bag, and walked out. There wasn't a bus stop nearby, so I walked 13 blocks under the warm September sun, the sweat soaking my back. But the simple, defiant act of leaving the house, walking on my own terms, made me feel lighter than I had in months. A small, fragile breath of freedom. At the store, I bought the cheapest detergent, $8.90, and sponges $1. Whoosher. I had less than $10 left for half a pound of bread. I was waiting in line, staring blankly at the conveyor belt, when I heard someone call my name. Rachel. I turned slowly. It was Vanda, my old friend from the public school where we used to teach together. She was 64, 3 years younger than me, but looked a full 20 years younger. Blonde hair neatly cut, a soft blouse, new jeans. She pushed a cart full of fresh groceries, bright fruit, creamy yogurt, expensive cheese, a bottle of wine, and me, with only detergent and sponges. Her eyes swept over me from head to toe, her face changing from casual recognition to shock, then concern. "Oh my God, Rachel. You've lost so much weight," I forced a smile. A brittle, unconvincing mask. "I'm on a diet." A lie. A painful, transparent lie. I wasn't dieting. I was starving. Starving for food? Yes, but more profoundly. Starving for freedom. For life itself. She frowned, lowering her voice, her concern palpable. "A diet? You look gaunt. And what's with these clothes? You never went out looking like this." "What exactly is going on?" My eyes stung with unshed tears. I bit my lip hard, fighting the overwhelming urge to break down completely in the middle of a grocery store aisle. "I'm fine, Vanda. Just a rough patch." She didn't believe me. Not for a second. She grabbed my hand, her grip firm and resolute. "We're talking right now." She paid for her groceries, insisted on covering my bread too, and pulled me into the small cafe across the street. She ordered 2 lattes and a slice of rich carrot cake, pushing it firmly toward me. "Eat." "I'm not hungry," I mumbled, my stomach clenching. "Eat, Rachel," she commanded, her voice softened but unyielding. "Before I have to feed you myself." I picked up the fork, my hand trembling slightly, and took a small, hesitant bite. Sweet, soft, fragrant. The taste exploded in my mouth. A forgotten pleasure. I nearly cried at the simple sensation. Something I hadn't truly felt in months. Vanda crossed her arms, her tone firm, unwavering. "Now talk. And don't give me any diet nonsense." What is truly happening? I wanted to deflect, to lie, to retreat back into my silent prison. But her eyes, so kind yet so penetrating, saw right through me, and I broke. I told her everything. The power of attorney, the absolute financial control, the humiliating $400 allowance, the cheap, tasteless food, the cut-off friends, the secret apartment, the $50,000, systematically gone. By the time I finished, I was openly weeping, wiping my face with a napkin already soaked through with tears. Vanda was silent for a long moment. Then her voice, though calm, was laced with steel. "You're housing a parasite, Rachel." "No," I protested weakly. "He's my son." "No," she repeated, firm. "He's a parasite, and worse. You're letting him feed on you, drain you dry." I looked up, my eyes red and swollen, the shame burning. "I'm not letting him. I just don't know what to do anymore." She leaned closer, her voice soft but utterly firm, her gaze holding mine. "You do know, Rachel. You're just afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid he'll leave you completely. So, you let him hurt you. You let him diminish you. As long as he stays close. But that's not love. Rachel, that's abuse. That's a slow, agonizing self-destruction." I broke down again. The truth of her words, a painful, undeniable revelation. She was right. I was terrified of being alone. I was terrified that if I fought back, truly fought, I'd lose my only child forever. But a chilling question began to form in my mind: was he still my son? Or just a stranger wearing his face? Systematically destroying me from the inside out. Vanda cupped my face with her hands, forcing me to meet her eyes. Her warmth a stark contrast to my cold fear. "Listen to me, Rachel. You don't have to endure this abuse just because he's your son. A child who doesn't respect his mother, who exploits her, doesn't deserve one. Now, you have to fight back." But how? I whispered, my voice thick with despair. I signed the papers, Vanda. I gave him everything. Power of attorney can be revoked. She stated simply. Factually. We're going to see a lawyer today. A chill ran through me. A strange, potent mix of deep fear and exhilarating hope. What if he finds out? What if he loses his temper? No. What ifs? Rachel, she said, cutting through my doubts. Do you plan to die slowly in that house? To fade away until there's nothing left but ashes? A forgotten memory. I didn't want that. And for the first time in months, I felt a tiny, defiant spark ignite deep inside me. Not despair anymore. Not even raw anger. But something small, resilient, and profoundly alive. Growing. You know a lawyer? Vanda prompted. His name's Richard Hayes. He's excellent. His office is downtown. I'm calling him right now. She dialed the number on her phone and booked an appointment for an hour later. Richard's office was small but impeccably tidy, smelling faintly of fresh coffee. A comforting aroma. He looked about 50, with distinguished salt and pepper hair and glasses resting on his chest. His handshake was firm, his smile kind and reassuring. Vanda explained everything concisely, while I, with trembling hands, handed over the documents I had meticulously hidden, the copy of the authorization, my bank statements, and the secret notes I'd kept of David's expenses. Richard read each page carefully, his expression neutral, then removed his glasses and looked directly at me. Mrs. Rachel, you are a victim of financial exploitation and abuse, he said, his voice grave. This is a criminal offense. My heart pounded. A crime, yes. He's been using your money for his own personal benefit, without your informed consent. Power of attorney does not grant permission to steal or exploit. But he's my son, I pleaded, still wrestling with the old programming. So what? His tone was firm, clear, but not harsh, just uncompromising. No one has the right to steal from their mother. No one. For the first time, I felt someone truly stand on my side. Someone who validated my experience, confirming that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't exaggerating the pain. What should I do now? I asked, a fragile hope in my voice. Step 1. He outlined. Revoke the authorization. Step 2. File a formal complaint with the authorities. Step 3. Block all his access to your accounts. Step 4. Reclaim what's rightfully yours. Everything he took. I turned to Vanda. She smiled, squeezing my hand. A silent promise. Everything's going to be okay. Rachel. And for the first time in so long, I truly, deeply believed it. The fox inside me, dormant for so long, had finally awakened, and it was ready to bite back. My mother used to say, dogs that bark don't bite. She was right. Of course, the truly dangerous ones are always quiet. They wait. They observe. They plan their moves in silence. For months, I had been screaming silently, trapped in an invisible cage of my own son's making. But now, I was quiet. A new, dangerous kind of quiet. Because the fox had awakened within me. And foxes, I knew, never warn before they strike. I left Richard's office with 3 distinct things: a precise, step-by-step plan, a formal complaint already in progress, and something I thought I'd lost forever, a hardened, unshakable determination. Vanda drove me home, talking nonstop, her words like a constant, reassuring hum. Be smart, Rachel. Move fast. But keep it absolutely secret. Don't let him suspect a thing. Not a flicker. Pretend nothing's changed. Be the sweet old lady he still believes you are. I nodded, looking out the window as we passed familiar streets. Old, weathered houses, and the park where I used to play as a child. Everything looked the same. Yet nothing was. Not me. When the car stopped in front of my house, Vanda grabbed my hand before I could even get out. Her grip surprisingly strong. "Rachel, are you sure about this? Because if you start this, if you expose him, and then back out halfway, he'll crush you completely. There will be nothing left." I looked her straight in the eyes, my gaze steady, and answered firmly, my voice steadier than it had been in years. "I'm sure." David was already sitting on the couch when I walked in. A plate of expensive lasagna balanced precariously on his lap, the kind of gourmet food he bought just for himself, while I quietly ate plain rice with a single egg. He didn't even look up at me, his eyes glued to the flickering TV screen. "Took you long enough." "Mom, did you get the stuff I asked for?" "Yes." I lied effortlessly. The word, a smooth, practiced art. I had, of course, left the detergent and sponges at Vanda's house. They're in the kitchen. He muttered something unintelligible and immediately turned back to his show. I went upstairs, closed the door to my room quietly, and took a deep, centering breath to calm the frantic pounding of my heart. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear its thrumming echo in my throat and temples. I sat on the edge of the bed, carefully took out the instruction sheet that Attorney Richard had given me, and read it 3 times until I had memorized every single step, every critical detail. Then, with a fierce resolve, I tore it into tiny pieces and flushed them down the toilet, watching them disappear. No one, absolutely no one, could know about this. The first crucial step was to revoke the power of attorney. But to do that, I had to get to the bank while David was not home. Completely unaware, the next morning, he left early, saying he had things to handle and wouldn't be back until late afternoon. I waited a few extra minutes, just to be sure he was gone, then put on my neatest clothes, a touch of lipstick for courage, carefully brushed my hair, and looked in the mirror. For the first time in months, I saw a real woman again, not a silent, fading shadow. The bank was packed, a sea of unfamiliar faces. I took a number and waited nearly 45 minutes before my number was finally called. The manager was the same young man in the navy blue suit who had witnessed me sign that stupid, life-altering paper weeks before. He smiled politely, a practiced corporate smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Rachel. How can I help you today? I'd like to revoke the power of attorney I signed for my son, David." I stated clearly, my voice unwavering. His smile faded, replaced by a look of surprise. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," I affirmed, my resolve hardening. He typed a few lines on his computer, frowned slightly, and then said, his voice tinged with professional concern, "Mrs. Rachel, your account has had multiple unusual transactions over the past 2 months, totaling over $54,000. These are highly irregular." I already knew. Of course, the cold, hard numbers seared into my memory. But hearing it out loud, articulated by a stranger, made my chest tighten with a renewed sense of betrayal. "That's exactly why I want to revoke it," I said, my voice cutting through his hesitation. He handed me a form, asked for 3 precise signatures, and directed me to get them notarized next door. When I returned, "The form's complete," he confirmed. "Your son no longer has access to your accounts, Mrs. Rachel. However, I strongly recommend changing all your passwords, your PINs, everything." I did it right there, on the spot. Card PIN, online login, every single access point. When I left the bank, my legs trembled slightly, but my chest felt incredibly lighter. A heavy weight lifted. Step 1, complete. Step 2 was to move the remaining money to another bank. A secure location David couldn't possibly trace. Vanda, my steadfast ally, came with me to a branch across town. A place David would never think to look. I opened a brand new account, solely under my name, with no authorized users, no loopholes. I transferred all the remaining savings, $38,000. Out of the initial $127,000, he had burned through nearly $90,000 in less than 3 months. But what was left, however diminished, was truly mine now, and no one, ever again, would touch it without my express permission. Step 3 was gathering irrefutable evidence. Whenever David went out, I quietly, meticulously searched the house like a seasoned detective. In his room, hidden in a drawer, I found a folder full of contracts, detailed invoices, and estimates, all undeniably tied to the apartment on Rose Street. I took photos of every single page with my phone. A silent, digital record. I couldn't take the originals. He would notice their absence. But the photos would be enough. More than enough. I discovered he had made a substantial down payment of $65,000. All strategically withdrawn from my account right before I canceled his authorization. The rest of the apartment purchase was financed, with 12 monthly payments of $2,890 each. And of course, where would those payments come from? My monthly pension. Neatly diverted. He had planned it perfectly. Keep me alive. Keep me utterly controlled. Hand out meager allowance money while systematically using my savings to build his luxurious future. And me, the foolish, unsuspecting mother, left to live off crumbs until the day I died. Each night, I lie in bed, staring at the damning photos on my phone, feeling a cold, precise rage crawl down my spine. Not wild, uncontrolled anger anymore, but something sharper, calmer, exquisitely calculated. David had gravely underestimated me. He thought I was stupid, weak, harmless. But his arrogance, his blind assumption of my helplessness, would become my most potent weapon. Step 4, the most dangerous and irreversible, was filing the formal report. Attorney Richard came with me to the police station. I brought every single piece of evidence, the precise bank statements, the incriminating photos, the detailed transfer records. The investigator, a calm, methodical man around 50, reviewed them carefully, his expression growing graver with each page. Then he looked at me. Mrs. Rachel, you have a solid case. This unequivocally qualifies as financial theft and elder abuse. Shall I open an investigation? How long will it take? I asked. My voice barely a whisper. Hard to say precisely. But with evidence as comprehensive as this. Not long at all. I signed my name to the official complaint, my hands trembling slightly, and took the receipt. There was no turning back now. The battle, truly, had begun, and I would win. In the days that followed, I diligently pretended nothing had changed. I still cooked for him, meticulously did his laundry, and took my paltry allowance without complaint. I even managed a hollow smile when he occasionally said, "Love you, Mom," and lowered my head, feigning submission, when he inevitably complained about the food I prepared. But inside, I was counting down the hours, the minutes. I was planning every single move, every calculated step, waiting for the precise, opportune moment to strike. Vanda called every day, her voice a lifeline. "Are you okay?" "Rachel, I'm fine." "Vanda, just a little longer now." Then, on a Monday night. After 2 weeks of playing the role of the obedient, subservient mother, I struck. I waited for David to go out to meet his friends, probably to spend more of my stolen money. And then I calmly went to the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator door and emptied it. His expensive craft beer, his frozen dinners, his preferred juice. All the deli meat, every single item, went unceremoniously into the trash. Then, with a deliberate hand, I wrote a note. It was short, precise, and utterly ruthless. From now on, whoever doesn't earn money doesn't eat. Welcome to the real world. The homeowner. I placed the note carefully inside the now empty fridge, closed the door, then walked out to the porch. I sat in my old rocking chair, wrapped once again in my mother's knitted shawl, and waited. I didn't have to wait long. His scream tore through the night. A raw, piercing sound sharp enough to make the neighborhood dogs bark in a frantic chorus. I kept rocking slowly, steadily, gazing up at the serene, starry sky. A deep calm settling over me. For the first time in 3 months, I genuinely smiled. A true, unburdened smile. His furious footsteps thundered across the floorboards. The porch door slammed open with a violent crash. David stood before me, his face flushed crimson, veins bulging grotesquely in his neck, his eyes wide with an unrestrained, terrifying fury. "What the hell did you do?" he bellowed, his voice ragged with disbelief and rage. I stayed seated, utterly calm, not a flicker of fear. He pointed a trembling finger toward the house, shaking with anger. "The fridge is empty. Where's the food? I threw it out," I said evenly, my voice quiet, clear, and utterly devoid of emotion. He took a menacing step forward, fists clenched, his body trembling with barely suppressed violence. "Are you insane? How dare you throw out my food?" "Your food?" I stood up slowly, deliberately, meeting his furious gaze head on. "That's strange," I continued, my voice now laced with a cold, cutting sarcasm. "Because as far as I know, the person who paid for it was me. With the money you stole from me?" He stumbled back half a step, as if I had physically slapped him across the face. "Stole? I didn't steal anything. I was managing it. I let out a dry, humorless laugh, a bitter sound. "You burned nearly $90,000 of my life savings in 3 months. Bought yourself a luxurious apartment, filled it with brand new furniture, all while I lived on eggs and cold rice, surviving on a humiliating $400 a month from my own money. That, David, is not management. That is outright theft." His mouth opened and closed, searching for excuses, for some desperate lie to spin. I was going to tell you about the apartment, when after you spent it all, or after I died, so you could simply inherit the rest. Sweat rolled down his forehead, a sheen of fear and desperation. "Mom, I did this for our future. We could rent the apartment, make extra income. It was a plan, our future." My voice rose, a surge of righteous anger finally breaking through. "You locked me in this house, David. You systematically cut me off from my friends, handed me allowance money like I was a beggar, bought cheap, substandard groceries, treated me like absolute garbage. And now you dare to talk about our future." He started to speak again, another protest forming, but I cut him off sharply. I bent down, picked up the folder I had strategically placed beside my chair, and held it out to him, the papers rustling. "You know what else I found? David, you spent $12,400 on custom flooring, $900 on a designer refrigerator, $8,200 on expensive furniture, and a cool $17,500 $500 on a brand new motorcycle you painstakingly hid in the garage. Want me to keep going? His face turned pale, almost gray, the blood draining from it. Mom, how? How did you get that from your room? I replied, my voice chillingly calm. I photographed everything, every receipt, every transfer record, every single cent you took. He stepped back, nearly tripping over his own feet in his panic. You went through my room. I corrected that. I said coldly, an ice blade in my voice. My house, my money, and now? I dropped the folder at his feet, the papers scattering, a silent confetti of his undoing. Now you'll give it back. He stared at the scattered papers, then at me. For the first time, I saw it genuine, unadulterated fear in his eyes. Give it back, Mom. I don't have the money anymore. It's gone, then sell the apartment. I stated, I can't. It's under my name. I signed a bank loan. I'm tied to it, that's your problem. David, I said, utterly devoid of sympathy. He grabbed his head, a gesture of sheer panic. You've lost your mind, you can't do this to me, can't I? I crossed my arms, looking straight into his terrified eyes, my own unblinking. David, I already have. I had revoked the power of attorney, changed every single password, moved the remaining money to another account, and filed the formal theft report with the police. The porch went silent. A heavy, suffocating silence. David stared at me as if I were a stranger, as if he couldn't possibly believe the resolute woman standing before him was the same one he'd effortlessly crushed for months. You reported me, he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. Yes, I said, my voice firm, resonating with a newfound authority. Because I am your mother. And you utterly forgot who you were dealing with. You stole from me. You humiliated me. You deliberately isolated me. You systematically made me feel worthless. And now you dare to demand loyalty. Loyalty is earned. David. And you lost it a very, very long time ago. He started crying then. Or perhaps he was just pretending. A desperate, final manipulation. I didn't care anymore. Mom, please, I know I messed up. Give me a chance to fix it. I'll pay you back slowly. I swear I'll get a job. Enough. I interrupted, my tone calm but icy. Unyielding. Enough lies. Enough empty promises. Enough using me. I took a folded paper from my purse and handed it to him, the edges crisp and final. You have 48 hours to leave this house. If not, the police will remove you. His hands shook so violently that he nearly tore the notice. You're kicking me out, but I have nowhere to go. That, I said, my voice flat, is no longer my concern. He dropped to his knees before me, clasping his hands in a desperate plea. Mom, please, I'm your son, don't do this. I looked down at the 8-year-old man, crying, begging, a pathetic figure. As if I were still the soft-hearted mother he could effortlessly manipulate with guilt. But this time, I felt nothing. No anger, no pity, no hate, just a cold, vast emptiness where love used to be. You were right about one thing. David, I said quietly, my voice carrying the weight of years. I once thought I only needed a small corner to die in, a quiet place to fade away. But now I realize I'm not ready to die. And when I do, it will be on my terms, in my own home, with my dignity fully intact. You won't be here to see it. I turned, walked inside the house, and with a deliberate click, locked the door behind me. I went upstairs and locked my bedroom door again. That night, for the very first time in months, I slept peacefully. There were no nightmares, no restless tossing, no lingering fear to haunt my dreams. The next morning, when I came downstairs, David was still sitting on the couch, eyes red-rimmed, face drawn and haggard. When he opened his mouth to speak, I simply raised a hand. A silent, authoritative gesture. I don't want to hear another word from you. I went into the kitchen, made my coffee, and ate buttered bread alone. In a silence that was finally my own, he stayed there, blank-eyed, a ghost in his own future. The next day, when I came back from the market, his suitcases were neatly stacked in the living room. He left without saying goodbye, without an apology, without even a note. And my very first, overwhelming feeling was profound relief. But the story wasn't quite over yet, because there was one last secret left to uncover. 3 days after David finally left, I received a call from my late husband's attorney. Mrs. Esther, Mrs. Rachel, she began, her voice professional but with an unusual softness. I need you to come to my office. There's a document I was instructed to hold, per your husband's specific request. My chest tightened with a sudden apprehension. What kind of document? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. A letter. He told me to give it to you only if David ever tried to take your property, if he ever became a threat to your security. I froze for a moment. The coincidence chilling. How did you find out? Attorney Richard called me. We're colleagues, she explained gently. He told me about your case. My hands shook faintly as I hung up the phone. Vanda was with me. She had practically moved in lately. A steady, comforting presence, helping me to piece my life back together. A letter, I told her, my voice trembling. Yes, I don't know what it says, but we'll find out soon enough. At the office, Mrs. Esther greeted us with her usual stern, composed expression. But this time there was something softer in her eyes, a hint of genuine sympathy. She pulled out an old, slightly yellowed envelope, sealed with a distinctive red wax. The handwriting on it was messy, somewhat shaky, but undeniably familiar. To Rachel, it read, "Open only if David becomes the man I always feared he might." My stomach twisted with a potent mix of dread and anticipation. Mrs. Esther carefully handed me the envelope. He gave this to me 2 years before he passed. She explained softly. He said he was afraid your son might one day take advantage of you, might try to exploit you. And he told me to deliver it only if that happened. She paused, her gaze holding mine. I suppose that time has. Regrettably. Come. I held the envelope, feeling its unexpected weight in my hands, sensing it contained not just paper, but truth. A final, painful farewell. With trembling fingers, I carefully broke the seal. Inside were 3 handwritten pages, the letters shaky and uneven, a testament to his declining health. He must have written them when he was already very sick, when he knew his time was short, when he finally had the clarity to see. Rachel, the letter began. If you are reading this, it means my deepest fear has come true. David has tried to take what belongs to you, to strip you of your security, and I am no longer there, physically, to protect you from him. But there's something I never had the courage, the sheer guts, to say while I was alive. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was deeply ashamed of the son I raised, the man he became. David was different. Rachel, even as a small child, not evil. At first, just cold. When other kids cried, he often laughed. When someone got hurt, he simply didn't care. Do you remember the neighbor's dog that got hit by a car? He just said, "It's only an animal." You told me he was just a thoughtless kid, but I knew better. Even then, As David grew older, things only got worse. Lying came as naturally to him as breathing. He often stole small amounts of money from my purse. And I, in my blind trust, always thought I had simply dropped it somewhere. Lost it. He was remarkably good at pretending, good at manipulating, a master at using everyone around him to get exactly what he wanted. Without a shred of remorse, I tried being strict. Rachel, I tried desperately to teach him right from wrong, to instill some sense of morality. But he didn't change. He only learned to hide his true nature better, to become more cunning. 3 years ago, he came to me, spinning a convincing tale that he needed to borrow $15,000 to pay off an urgent debt, threatening legal action if he didn't pay. I gave him the money, but I had deep, nagging doubts. So, I quietly hired someone, a private investigator, to investigate. The result: there was no debt whatsoever. He had used the money to buy an expensive motorcycle, a lavish toy, which he intended to flip for a quick profit. He lied to his own father, without a blink of an eye, without any visible compunction. That was the moment, Rachel, when I truly realized our son was not a good man, and he never would be. I didn't tell you because I knew, deep down, you wouldn't believe me. You always defended him, said I was too harsh, too critical. Perhaps I was strict. But strictness doesn't create a monster. Monsters, I believe, are born that way or choose to become them. That's why I meticulously wrote the will as I did. The house is in your name only, indivisible. And if you ever pass away, it will go straight to charity. Never, ever through anyone else's hands. Because I knew, with absolute certainty, that if he ever had the chance, he would take everything from you, leave you with nothing. And if you are reading this, it means I was right. I am so deeply sorry I didn't tell you sooner, didn't share my fears openly. I'm sorry for leaving you to face this alone, for burdening you with this truth after my death. But never, Rachel, ever blame yourself for this. You are the best mother any child could ever dream of having. This is not your fault, it is his. Be strong. Be free. You've always been stronger than you think. My love. The final lines were scrawled faintly, love you. Even if I never said it well. Michael. By the time I reached the very last line, tears were streaming down my face. Not from profound sadness, but from a profound, liberating release. I forgave not David, but myself. For months, I had tormented myself relentlessly, thinking it was my fault, that if I had been a different kind of mother, my son would have been different, too. But Michael was right. The problem, the fundamental flaw, was never me. Vonda finished reading, her own eyes moist, then took my hand tightly, her grip a steady comfort. Your husband loved you, Rachel, she said softly, in his own complicated way. But it was real. He did love you. I wiped my tears and nodded softly, a new understanding settling in my heart. I know, I whispered. Mrs. Esther handed me a tissue, her stern features softened by emotion. There's one more thing. Mrs. Rachel, your husband left explicit instructions that if you ever needed legal support against David, I, personally, would represent you for free. He prepaid all legal fees for 5 years. 2 years before he passed. I froze, the revelation hitting me with the force of a physical blow. He did that, so long ago, to protect me. Yes, Esther said gently, reading my disbelief. He knew, and he did everything he could, from beyond, to protect you. Rachel, that night, I sat in my rocking chair, holding the letter pressed to my chest, gazing at the starlit sky as a soft moonlight bathed the porch in a silver glow. I whispered into the quiet night, as if Michael could somehow hear me. Thank you. Thank you for still protecting me, even from beyond the grave. For the first time since he died, I didn't feel alone. 2 weeks later, David texted me, "Mom, I'm so sorry. I know I was wrong. I need help. I have nowhere to stay. Can you lend me a few thousand?" I stared at the message for a long, quiet time. I thought about replying, about sending him money. The old habits of maternal instinct pulling at me. Then I remembered Michael's letter. Every agonizing detail of what had happened. And the strong, resilient woman I had finally become. I replied with one word. Decisive and final no. Then I blocked his number, severing the last fragile thread. The war was over. I had won. And the best part, I soon learned, was that once you truly take back control of your life, good things, unexpected blessings, begin to unfold. The story is almost over. But the ending? Oh, the ending is worth every second of this journey. 6 months have quietly passed since then. Some mornings, I still wake up amazed that this is, truly, my life now, free, whole, and finally, truly living. Today is one of those mornings. I woke up early. The subtle, comforting smell of coffee already drifting up from the kitchen. It wasn't me who brewed it. It was Clara, the bright, kind nursing student who now rents the back room, the one that used to be David's. She's 23, with curly hair usually tied back, a bright, infectious smile, and an abundant energy that makes the entire house feel alive again. Vibrant. She studies diligently in the morning, works at the hospital in the afternoon, and in the evening, we often sit together on the porch, talking about everything and nothing, sharing the simple rhythm of life. At first, I was deeply hesitant about having someone else live in the house. After everything I'd been through with David, the profound betrayal, I was understandably afraid to share my space again. Afraid of being used. Afraid of trusting the wrong person. Of opening myself up to another heartbreak. But Vanda, ever wise, told me, "Rachel, you need company. But from someone real. Someone who contributes. Not someone who clings to you like a leech. Post a room for rent. And choose someone who genuinely makes you feel comfortable. Truly at peace." So, I did. Clara was the first to reply. She came one Sunday afternoon, shyly, holding a small notebook and wearing a nervous, hopeful smile. She explained she was struggling to pay for school, that her family in Ohio couldn't help much financially. When I looked at her, truly looked, I saw someone fighting not to take from others, but to bravely stand on her own 2 feet, to build her own future. I nodded. A quiet affirmation. You can stay. The rent is $650 a month. We'll share the kitchen and bathroom. I cook. You help tidy up. Is that okay? She nearly cried with sheer relief, her eyes brimming. From that day, my house breathed again, slowly filling with a new, gentler energy. When I went to the kitchen this morning, Clara had already set the table for 2 fluffy scrambled eggs, crispy toast, fresh fruit, hot coffee with milk, the aroma a comforting presence. She smiled, her eyes bright. "Good morning, Mrs. Rachel. I'm off today." So I made breakfast for both of us. I sat down, eating slowly, savoring every bite, tasting the warmth of food made with genuine kindness, not obligation. "Thank you, sweetheart," I said, a warmth spreading through me. She shrugged, smiling even brighter, her youth radiant. You cook for me all the time. It's only fair I return the favor sometimes. After breakfast, Clara went to meet her friends. I stayed home. But the silence that settled was no longer heavy, oppressive. It was peaceful. A quiet contentment. I opened my closet, took out an old shoebox, and inside were my neatly organized bank statements. Balance $71,000. David had been ordered by the court to pay me $52,000 in restitution. He'd rushed to sell the apartment he bought with my money, losing a fortune in the process due to his haste and desperation. Still, the payment came through in full, all meticulously documented. My monthly pension was back to $3,240, fully under my control. With the steady room rent from Clara and my growing savings, I finally had real, tangible security. I put the papers away, a sense of deep satisfaction settling over me, and walked to the living room. The house was truly different now. I had fixed a few things, not everything, for I still needed to save, but enough to make it feel mine again. I painted the walls a light, almost white color, to make the space feel open, airy. I bought a new sofa, not the extravagant turquoise one I'd once dreamed of, but a soft, comforting beige that felt like a gentle hug every time I sat down. I replaced the faded curtains, planted a few pots of vibrant flowers on the porch, and bought a new fan for the bedroom. Every small, deliberate change was a quiet, firm declaration: this house is mine. This life is mine. At exactly 1000, the gate bell rang. A familiar welcome chime. It was Vanda, coming to pick me up for our Wednesday women's group meeting. I put on the new floral blouse I'd bought with my own money, chosen by myself, and felt light as air, truly free. On the way, she asked, as she always did, her voice laced with genuine care. You doing okay? Rachel, I'm great. I smiled, a wide, honest smile. And this time, it was truly, unequivocally true. We met in a small church hall, 12 women, all over 60, each carrying her own unique story. Some were widowed, some abandoned, some, like me, had been profoundly betrayed by their own children. We shared, we laughed, we cried, we cooked together. And in doing so, we found unexpected hope and fierce strength in one another. Today was my turn to speak. The coordinator, Mrs. Ellen, with her silver hair and kind, understanding eyes, invited me to the center of our circle. Rachel, would you like to share your story with everyone today? I took a deep, steadying breath and began. I spoke about David, about the insidious control, about the suffocating fear, but also about Michael's prophetic letter, about the hard-won justice, and about the beautiful, unexpected new beginnings. When I finished, many women were in tears, not out of pity, but because they saw themselves, their own hidden pains and silent struggles, reflected in my story. A woman named Carmen, Tishar, frail but with a determined light in her eyes, raised her hand. My son manages all my money, she said, her voice trembling. Says it's to help me, but I'm too scared to fight back. Rachel, I looked at her, met her gaze directly, and said clearly, my voice resonating with hard-earned wisdom, you have to fight back. Carmen, you have to. Before it's too late. No one's coming to save you. Only you can do that for yourself. She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. But her eyes, I noticed, shone with a new, defiant spark. After the meeting, Vanda took me to our favorite restaurant. A cozy, familiar place with home-style food that always felt like a warm embrace. We ordered cheesy grilled beef, fluffy white rice, baked beans, and crispy fries. We ate and chatted, like old times. Truly old times. The easy camaraderie flowing effortlessly between us. You look different, Rachel, Vanda observed, her gaze perceptive. Different how I laughed. A genuine, joyful sound. Lighter, more like yourself. Because I am myself again, I replied, the truth ringing clear. That evening, I returned home to a beautiful surprise waiting on my porch. A large box wrapped in plain brown paper, tied with a vibrant red ribbon, and a heartfelt card that read, "Thank you, Mrs. Rachel, for giving me a home when no one else believed in me. You are the mother I always wished I had. Love, Clara." My hands trembled with unexpected emotion as I opened the box. Inside was a soft, sea-green knitted blanket, handmade, in my favorite color. I sat down in my rocking chair, wrapped it around my shoulders, and cried, not from sadness this time, but from profound gratitude, from a deep sense of belonging, from the sheer, overwhelming beauty of earned love. That's when I finally understood the most important truth of all. Family isn't merely blood. Family is the people who choose to stay, who genuinely care, and who, by their own free will, choose to walk beside you through all seasons of life. That night, sitting on the porch under the vast, starry sky, bathed in soft moonlight, I thought about everything. About David, about Michael, about the fragile, uncertain woman I once was, and the strong, resilient person I had finally become. I realized you often have to fall, spectacularly. To truly learn how to rise with grace, you have to lose things, precious things, to understand what is truly valuable. And you have to hit absolute rock bottom to discover, deep within yourself, just how incredibly strong you still are. David never reached out again after I blocked his number. Neighbors said he eventually rented a small apartment and got a steady job. Whether that's true or not, it honestly doesn't matter anymore. He's no longer my responsibility. I did my duty as a mother. I raised him, loved him, protected him to the best of my ability. And he chose another path, a different trajectory. That choice is entirely his. And so, too, are its consequences. I looked up at the boundless sky and whispered, "Thank you, Michael, for believing I was strong enough to face this. You were right." Then I said softly to myself, my own voice a comforting presence in the quiet night, "And thank you, Rachel, for not giving up." Because true wealth, I've come to understand, isn't what we own in material possessions. It's what we steadfastly refuse to let others take from us. And the most precious, irreplaceable thing of all is our unyielding self-respect. Some wounds, I've learned, never truly heal the way we expect them to, leaving no trace. But time and courage, applied diligently, turn them into scars, not painful anymore, just quiet, indelible reminders of how strong we were to survive, to overcome. I once thought a mother's love was an unbreakable, unconditional bond. But now I understand that love, true love, must be nurtured with mutual respect and unwavering honesty. When someone only takes and never gives, when they drain your spirit and resources without reciprocation, that is not love. It's a heavy, crushing burden. It took me nearly a lifetime to learn one simple, profound truth. Loving your child, truly loving them. Doesn't mean losing yourself in the process, dissolving your identity for them. Because only when you meticulously preserve your own dignity and self-respect can you truly give love that is real, authentic, and whole. Family, after all, isn't where you merely endure hardship. It's where you genuinely belong, where you find profound peace, and where you are, unequivocally, loved for who you truly are.